Hi everyone, this is Stefano from Sonixinema. Today I'm thrilled to kick off our new series Behind the Music, which features 12 composers, 12 stories and 12 unique styles. Today I'm really excited to be speaking with composer extraordinaire Dominik Scherrer. You may know Dominik's music from hit TV shows such as The Tourist, The Serpent, Baptist, and many of the finest film and television dramas in recent years. Today we'll be discussing his life, his process, and how, after getting his big break at the age of 37, he began his path to become one of the UK's top composers. Hi Dominik, thank you very much for joining me today.
That's all right.
I think last time I saw you, you were working on The Missing. It was 2016.
Yeah. Is that possible? Yes. Yeah, I guess so. That would have been series 2 of The Missing.
So I'd like to start today by asking you about your upbringing and like how you started, basically. I think it's always fascinating to hear how the choices we made when we are young, or especially the surroundings, have an impact for the rest of our lives.
Yes, of course. Yeah, I grew up in Switzerland on the Lake of Zurich, and I was quite a musical family, not professional musicians, but passionate and, singing in choirs and things like that, which then I did for a while as well. And, so there's a lot of music around the house. And then, you start playing more classical, so I'm a trained flautist.
Oh, me too.
Are you? Okay, right. And so, unfortunately, I don't practice now, the flute. So whenever I need a good flute, I get, all the great players to play it, So I'm recording myself doing some effects and stuff. So, but then I kind of I actually started to kind of write music quite early on, also to film. I was making kind of my own films and animations, but
that's really interesting. To compose the music, you like the right, okay, I'm not going to wait for someone to hire me. I'm just going to make it myself.
Yeah, well, I kind of just see it as one, because I guess when you are a sort of teenager and you see films, you sort of perceive the whole piece as one, with the music and the image and everything. So I sort of felt like I wanted to create that. I then, initially it was kind of quite a lot of sound design sort of elements that I just started recording and synth. Initially I had a very simple synth as well, and I had a piano, my grandmother's piano, and so I was sort of creating these kind of little soundtracks really.
Was it the Mini Moog, the synth?
No, I can't. I wish, no.
Okay.
It was a Gen SX 1000. I think Italian. Yeah, they're Italian, aren't they? Yeah.
I don't know.
Yes.
Probably.
It was kind of bought at the flea market, and then I actually managed to buy an old a Moog, a Poly Moog, which is quite an instrument really, and I had that restored. But at the same time, I was quite into sort of, sampling and things like that. So I was using a lot of a small Casio sampler and, things like that, whatever you need to make sound.
I wasn't there, I wasn't even born probably then. So I don't know, but yeah, by the sound of it from people like you, I experienced that. I think nowadays you're very, very lucky with all the gear and equipment and sounds available for, I bet they were a lot expensive.
Well, I guess so, but almost none of it was affordable to a sort of normal human. But you see, you don't really need that much, in order to create a sound. And if you look back at, kind of this, the periods before me, and all the bands who started to do interesting stuff with synths and stuff, they were not the ones necessarily who had the great polyphonic synthesizers, but they were the kind of northern bands from England who just had one synth, and they kind of layered up some stuff. And, eventually then, this carried on, and I had bands. And also I was getting more and more seriously into composition, and I was doing a lot of acoustic stuff, initially just a lot of string quartets, or I was writing a lot for a piano trio that's with violin, clarinet, and piano. And you kind of just work for, rather than sort of doing an orchestra, you just sort of work for one lineup and see how much. And I studied, Bartok a lot, and just people who are great at writing for those kind of chamber lineups.
Yeah, because I read you worked for quite a few years in theater. Did like help you develop your skill as a composer as well?
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, and some of it, the first shows I actually just performed. I played myself on the piano, and I'm a pianist, but not not the greatest pianist. But it's interesting to play the same score every night to a different audience. You learn a lot, because every night is really different. That's a surprising thing, and they laugh in different places, and it's normally kind of just a sort of how the audience is composed, and then there are a few kind of dominant people. It's great to have an audience, because of course what the work, when you're writing for the screen, as I'm doing predominantly now, you're kind of a bit in the dark all the time. You write something, and then the audience is going to see it in 3 months' time or longer. So you just sort of trust your instincts. But it's great to have gone through this period, or also with my band, touring, and just to have this kind of immediate musical feedback, because then you sort of find out this works, or here they get impatient maybe, or here it needs to be a bit more relaxed and they need to get into it, and you can sort of feel it, with people.
If I'm not mistaken, you did Miss Marple, Agatha Christie was like around 37.
Yes, that's correct.
It's quite impressive, because I think there's a message here for people like me, or like younger than me, because that takes that much time. Like I think nowadays we expect things to happen very quickly. We do a master, we go out, okay, where's my film? I want to be successful like overnight. But then overnight maybe means 10 years. I don't know, how was your, like, what motivated you? What gave you the strength to not give up?
Yeah, it's very true what you're saying, because sometimes I have somebody who just graduate and they go to me and it's like, why am I not getting these jobs? How do you get these jobs? And I kind of say like, well, just wait, do stuff, and it will, the more you do, then it will come automatically at some point. You get better at it and you get more experience, and then, but also, maybe the things I did before they were kind of, commercially on a larger scale, are just as valid for me as well. There was a lot of art house films or short films, and you really try and make these kind of beautiful and nice, so maybe they are kind of an important part of the journey as well. And I think sometimes one can get a bit too obsessed with this sort of like doing orchestral or large scale things, because there is a lot of kind of publicity around it, a lot of on social media, and kind of behind the scene, there's a lot of that everywhere, and people sort of think this is the only way you can actually make a soundtrack. But no, I mean, you do a clarinet and a piano or something, and you can do something really great.
I know you're very involved in the pre-filming experience, going to table reads, create music there on the spot, or went to Africa for the Widow, to Bangkok for the Serpent, and compose the music there, recording local talents. How does that affect your creativity?
Yeah. Well, I mean, this is part of my sort of strategy to get started early, and to have this kind of 1-2 months of just kind of enjoying writing some themes without being in this high pressure situation of where you have a cut and then you have in 10 days later you have to deliver the score for the episode, you know. So I want to kind of build up not only a pool of themes but also of interesting recordings, because then, you know, particularly when it's more soloistic stuff, this is material you can't really mock up and then, you know, to show to the producers and go like, well, this is going to be a vocal like that, blah blah, and they go like, well, what is it? I mean, I don't understand, you know. So you actually need to play them the real thing. So this sort of allows me, whether this is in Thailand or in Africa or just simply at my studio, it's fine. I mean, of course but one of the reasons why I went to Thailand for the Serpent was also because the production was based there. They were shooting there. So I needed to sort of hook up a little bit with the production, even the writers, everyone was there, you know. It allowed me to just have much better communication and to, you know, sort of tune into the project a little bit, and then to be able to record, you know, specific instruments. But generally, you know, some, you know, in the last year, I mean, I did a show called the Tourist, which was set in Australia. So I would have tried to go to Australia, but we've got COVID, and you know, you can't travel at the moment, and certainly not to Australia. You know,
so you sampled the musicians there. You recorded like hits or rhythm, and then you brought all the material back and edited together. Or
I actually sort of record complete pieces.
Complete pieces, okay.
You know, I you know, and then later I can always lift some things out of those, and some interesting, maybe I go like this, or I take this line and transpose it an octave down, or slow it down, or speed it up, or something like that. And then some instruments, yes, I do sample, but simply, like for example in Thailand, I sampled some of these gongs and because simply they are only diatonic. So, and you know, this is thriller music, and you want a certain amount of chromaticism there, you know. So sometimes I had some melodies and they couldn't actually play them because they are just on a kind of C major scale, you know. So then they left out whatever the B flat, and then I could slot it in afterwards from my kind of custom sampled collection.
I want to ask you something because it's a different approach, and as it happened that, you know, because you compose so much beforehand, that when you see the real footage, say, actually, wait, maybe that doesn't work. I had a completely different idea, you know, the color, the acting, and then you have to rewrite. As it happened to you?
Well, I mean, you know, you're not writing completely blindly, because I often start when they're starting to shoot. So each week I get what they call an assembly or a weekly assembly. So whatever they shot through the week, and they already start to put on some, because then I send already music to the cutting room. So they already start to put some of my themes on there, you know. So yes, I agree, you know, sometimes you find like, well, this doesn't, you know, and then you want to push a bit in that direction. But you see, I mean, scoring is not really necessary. You don't just want to have something that fits nicely with a picture.
Yeah.
What you need to do is tell a story. And so you kind of need to sit down with a script and sort of see, you know, how do you tell this story, and the music tells the story again. Sometimes the music may not be may not sit that perfectly with a picture, but it's actually does the right thing story wise, you know.
Yeah. So, yes, and it's helpful, I suppose, for the editor to have some material that, you know, it's yours and not like someone else. I don't know if it happened to you.
Well, that's one of the reasons, you know, because it used to be, you know, that I just get a cut and it's full of James Newton Howard or something like that, you know. And if you have a budget that's only like kind of 3% of James Newton Howard's budget,
yeah.
then you have a problem, you know. And then also it sort of dilutes the storytelling and the scoring process, because of course the producers and the directors are kind of used to the temp,
absolutely,
and
yeah.
you know, it's an old age problem. So by doing, you know, starting early and supplying them with temp music, I'm sort of avoiding that. Not entirely, you know. Sometimes they still kind of use some other stuff, but generally, and you know, it's nice because then the score kind of evolves with the cut, and it means, you know, I spend more time on a project than another composer would do, you know. So I only do about 2 series per year, and you know, a lot of other busy composers, you know, I mean, there was times when I did like 5 a year or something, and it just
stuff.
It's well, it just means you have less of that kind of artistically liberated period, you know. So I'm trying very much to you know, just take on a kind of minimal amount of projects, and then to kind of, you know, make them great and enjoy them. That's more satisfying.
Yeah, definitely. Because I work on 3 TV series, but not at the same level as yours. So I didn't have the same pressure. But I heard, you know, the time is very, very limited. You know, they give you a cut, and then by the end of the day, if you haven't made the music for it and recorded it, you're already late, basically.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's must be quite hard also on mental health. You know, pressure, no sleep, tiredness, and you have to do it. Otherwise, you know, you're late.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, composing, no matter what, I think is essentially a kind of strain on your mental health. No matter what. I mean, it's never easy, you know. It's just to get a tune or get something. You know, it's at the moment it's always hard, you know, and you, in the end, you still always feel like you are kind of running out of time a bit, you know. But I think that's just part of it. But it's sort of, by having this pool of themes and recordings that I did earlier, you know, I know that, you know, it's sort of a bit my backup as well, you know. I just sort of know that there is interesting stuff, and you know, we can utilize it somehow. So
talking about the Serpent, because I was listening to a soundtrack, and also Baptiste, which is amazing music, by the way. Like, really loved it. So I really love the synth sounds. Is that, you know, a sort of a passion you have since your childhood? When you had the Mini Moog, and you like, do you use analog? Do you use virtual synthesizers? What's your go-to, let's say?
Yeah. So I used to. I mean, at the moment, like I have a few analog synths on the Serpent, because what happened then was, you know, we had lockdown and everything, so I had to move to a home studio, and I only have one synth, with analog synth with me, and the rest is you know, software stuff. But then also, you know, with that being a kind of you know, 1970s inspired project, there is some interesting, you know, material from then, you know, that I was
sort of like a synthesizer from the 70s, you mean? Like,
yeah, well, for example, you know, there's a band called Tontos, and they you know, those are the guys who build the Tonto, which is a very large modular synthesizer, you know. But it kind of just sounds different to like modular stuff, you know, because there's a lot of modular stuff you hear now these days, you know. It's very popular and quite common, but somehow their stuff, or in its approach, was different and radical, you know. It was kind of, there was a lot of really radical stuff. So as it happened, actually, And it has crossed my mind to actually go and use Tonto, because that synth still exists. It's in Calgary in Canada now, but then
so there's
again,
only
you know,
one.
yeah, it's just it's basically a very large modular that consists of sort of Moog and ARP modules and stuff, you know. So, but then when I was in Bangkok, I was also meeting up with this synth programmer, Stefan Baer, and he actually knew Tonto because he had a studio in LA that used the same service personnel. So then he I played him some of the sort of 1970s recordings, and I told him, like, can you do, you know, can we recreate some of these sounds and stuff? And so he did that in Zebra, in Yuhi Zebra. And it worked out really well. And then, you know, with the right effects and stuff, I think they become really interesting. So, and I use Zebra and I use Diva a lot, and I do a lot of, you know, kind of programming in those. And then I use an analog synth a lot called Boomstar by Studio Electronics.
Boomstar, okay.
Boomstar, and they do a few of those. There's one that is a bit you know, has the same filters as a ARP 2600. So I use that quite a bit as well. And I like you know, I think there is sort of beauty in synth sounds and stuff. And but I also, you know, I like digital as well. You know, I guess when I was young, you know, I was maybe more excited about kind of earlier digital technology, you know, like my compatriots in Zurich, you know, the band Yellow, who were using Fairlight sampler, and then Laurie Anderson with her Synclavier, you know, which was a kind of very high quality sampler for the time, you know, and I like the sort of I kind of like the sound of digital and the possibilities in there. You know, it's sort of funny, you know, these days everyone always talks about kind of analog, you know, sort of everyone wanted to, so analog is real and it's alive and all that.
Yeah,
and
tape emulations, you know, because I think I wasn't born at the time, but I think people wanted to remove the noise of the tape, but now people want the noise of the tape, like, so they buy emulations and they can add this tape sound to it.
Yeah, the one thing is sort of the noise and but you know, there is also something kind of imperfect about digital as well, you know, and I think that's okay, and I think there is an attraction in that as well. I just sort of think the obsession with analog, I don't know, it just feels a bit kind of dated to me now. I don't know, but you know, or I like using a mix, really. It's good.
So talking about you know, because at Sonixinema we make virtual instruments, so something that you think it's missing nowadays in the virtual instrument world, what do you think could be?
I don't really actually know what's around, so I don't think I could answer it. In fact, I don't even I knew we had this, you know, we were talking now, so I thought, oh, I better check what I've got from Sonixinema and sort of audition through the samples and go like, oh yes, okay, that's fine, because most of the time, you know, actually don't even have time to listen to all this stuff, you know, to audition the samples. So I don't know, you know, for me, one of the things is that I guess, I have kind of a lot of libraries, and so what gets in the way from using them is because you need to find the right stuff. So for me, most of the time, it's quicker to just generate something at my end and do it myself, you know.
Okay, so basically, you know, they're just sort of a means to like to be replaced mostly with real players, and or to give an idea to producer or director before you have the chance to record.
Yeah, well, sometimes, but again, you know, I avoid. I mean, maybe that applies in terms of orchestral stuff. Everything else, I probably just record, so then I don't really care. I don't have to kind of make the mock-up sound good. I just do it, record, because if it's like solos and small recordings, it's not like it doesn't cost the earth to record it, so you may as well just record it and then get it done. But and then otherwise I do use samples in, there's a lot of electronic stuff, and I enjoy using it, so but in a way, I guess probably often I sort of alter the material a bit as well, or I mess around with it a little bit, in Contact or whatever.
Talking about recording, and you say it's quite affordable to record musicians. So I just saw today, actually, you posted on Twitter, really nice video of your setup. Because when I came to your studio, I think everything was in a different place. He had your keyboard on the side, a big virtual screen, but now I see it's moved on the sides. Is that because you wanted to make room for musicians, or for some other reason?
Yes, I mean, what the luck was, it was good and bad, but we had lockdown, so it meant, I was working from home for a year, actually, or longer, and I still have the setup at home. Well, in fact, I am at home. This is my home setup here, so
that's good.
And so it gave me the opportunity to redesign the existing studio a little bit, because we could do it during, in the middle of production and stuff, so I had all sorts of, work done and the booth removed. And so, yes, I created a lot more space. So there is now much more room. So I'll do, a quintet in there. And then I'm using basically another studio that's across the hall, but by a friend, John Waggins, as a control room. So, and also we had a lot of more acoustics done at my studio. So the room is sounding really nice and balanced now, actually. So the recordings in there sound really satisfying now. So
you can use, instead of going to a studio now, you can just do it in your studio.
Well, yeah, but also, I mean, it's, I quite like this, and I'm just planning now I'm on a new show, and I think a lot of it will be this kind of layered sort of textural things, I don't layer stuff up to make it sound bigger, because I'm never interested in that, so, but just to, it's a sort of approach, I guess, if you're used to kind of pop production, this is quite normal in a way. And I quite enjoy now kind of building up this project, and it'll ultimately be more orchestral sound, but it's kind of just recorded more in sections, really. I quite enjoy this, as opposed to, for a long time you were just working with samples and playing the samples to the director, blah blah, and then at the very last moment you go bam, and then there is an orchestra, and I think that's just not very interesting, because it actually sort of restricts your orchestral writing like that, because in the end, if you do it like that, you just write stuff that sounds good on the mock-up, because otherwise it will never get signed off. So it has to sound good in the mock-up, but not, as we know, if you work with samples, there's not,
that is so true,
not everything you can do with samples, so that's why, that's why you hear a lot of soundtracks these days, and you can't actually really tell if they are live or ensembles, because even if they are done live, the live players actually, so they almost try and make it sound like the samples, because they don't want such a big change anymore.
Yeah, that's so true. And right today I was listening to some of your music, and I think it was Marble maybe, but anyway, I thought, wow, this would be challenging to do with samples. So I assume, that's why it's a good idea to either, use pencil and paper or a piano, which is like you can, like, especially maybe for agile string writing, you're not constricted by the samples. Another thing that I remember now, actually, which I thought was very interesting, when we came there, you told me that I think it was Jake Jackson come directly to your studio to mix on your speakers and do everything inside your project. So it's there for you. And do you still do that? I saw a picture with Alan Meyerson recently. Yeah. So is that still what you do when you have a project? You bring in the mixing engineer to mix it in your studio directly?
Yeah, I mean, well, yes. I mean, not in the case of Alan Meyerson, but because we were just, doing. Well, I was just doing this seminar with him in France, basically. But yes, with Jake and with other engineers, basically everything is mixed at mine. It's partly because it forces the production to just stick to my sort of set of plugins and the software that I have, because often I go back afterwards and I may do a change and then if it would just get a lot more complicated. But also, a lot of that work is almost a sort of collaboration, I guess, as well, because I may start a mix, or whatever, Jake or somebody may start a mix, and then I do, some alterations, and then I may go back to him. I think it's partly that, plus also on the series, when I actually run in the mix, if there are samples and stuff, I don't print the stuff to audio. I just leave it running live, because I can then maybe take that element, from one episode and use it in another episode, and I can, transpose it up a little bit or down, but it's already maybe, sonically sort of in the right arena in terms of the EQ or something like that, so.
And is that something you would recommend to other, like, maybe younger composer, or like, actually anybody, like, to bring in a mixing engineer? And I suppose also you can learn things by watching them. Do you ask questions like, why did you do that? Or just sit quiet, silently?
Maybe. I mean, I would recommend it, but only if you need a good setup, so that's why, I mean, I you spend a lot of money was spent in my room just doing acoustics, and there is, so, and then, getting the right kind of speakers that everyone is happy with, sort of.
So, I remember them. They were massive.
No, I still have the so they're ATCs, and so I have now the kind of full, since then, I have the, well, it's anyway more full surround setup like that, and it's partly because those speakers are a bit everywhere, they're in a lot of the studios, and everyone likes them, or they don't hate them, because there's always some engineers, they hate Genelec, some engineers hate Adam, some engineers hate this, but the ATCs generally don't get as much hate as the others, So I recommend it in that. I mean, in terms of, kind of sitting there and asking questions, I think that would kind of annoy somebody. So, and also,
good point.
For me, I mean, I don't do it. I mean, I'm normally not there, because it takes so long, and there's stuff that I'm much better off doing in the meantime that will make the project better, or something. So,
what would you say is the most challenging and rewarding aspect of your job?
When you're doing the project, it's a lot of uncertainty all the time, and it's difficult. A lot of projects are just kind of difficult, and you just sort of have to get used to that. So that's definitely, there's a lot of it, a lot about it is challenging, from beginning to end. Also simply sometimes just writing some music is difficult, and then you have a lot of different people to deal with, and they say you have to learn how to sort of read their language, you know, because they say one thing, but they kind of probably mean something else. So that's a lot of that is a challenge. And then I think the reward comes much later. It's kind of when people go like, oh, I like that, and that's interesting. And of course, you know, one of the rewards is recording the music, because it's you know, and having the input of the musicians. And you know, when you know, you write something and then you talk about how it should be interpreted, that's rewarding, I think, and interesting. And then I think finally sort of seeing that it works, you know, when you are maybe in the dub or in a screening, and then you sort of can watch the whole thing through, and you go like, oh yeah, so that, you know, so, but you know, still then, you know, even then you may still have a lot of uncertainty. And it's normally only kind of months later, maybe, where you kind of can sit back a little bit and go like, oh yeah, I think that really worked. And so, you know,
some memories fade away a bit. You know, you don't remember the bad part. Yeah, it wasn't too bad.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, yeah, no, because what remains is just the music, you know, the recording, and then. So.
I read in the Tourist was one of the biggest, you know, series, like opening episode, like on ITV ever, like, which is pretty amazing. Like, are you, you know, do you care about also that aspect? You know, that if something is successful and people like it, or you know, you do a project to sort of move on, and. How do you feel about past projects?
Yeah, I mean, that it's great. At the same time, you know, there is some other shows you do, and they just, for one reason or another, they just are not doing that well. And this, sometimes it has to do with the timing of the release, with, you know, or how much money the whatever Netflix or somebody, you know, puts into PR, or maybe just whether the actors have got enough sort of pulling power or not, you know. So I think you can't get too distracted by, you know, what really is then the success of something or not, you know.
Do you ever feel, so this is more like personal question that just came to mind, like, I feel always hunting, you know, for more, like, what's next? Do you ever feel like at peace? You say, okay, I'm just content how I am, don't need like another project for now, just want to enjoy my personal life? Or do you always feel this feeling inside, like, okay, what's going to happen next? I need something new coming.
Yeah, I mean, yes, I mean, I think I'm definitely like that. I think you because you know, you always feel like you're just somewhere on a journey, you know, and you're just, I still feel I'm at the beginning of a journey, you know, and only just sort of actually learning, you know, how to make it work and all that, you know. So yes, each time, and it's just exciting to immerse yourself in a different world and story and all that. So yes, I do. I enjoy kind of, you know, pushing forward all the time. Definitely. Yeah. It's kind of, you know, it's because otherwise it's like, what else would I do? You know, it's like, what do you, am I going to take up a hobby or something? I don't know. Or I don't know. This is my passion, you know. So
you would say that you don't have like a hobby. Okay, you finish working. I don't want to think about music, like, especially maybe now with the pandemic, you know, mental health, especially for composers. I always, not always, but especially here, you know, this sort of, you know, oh, how amazing, I worked for 3 days without sleeping, And there's also this a bit of this mentality, you know, like the more you are, which I think is completely wrong personally. I think Do you have any words of advice for maybe other composers that look up to you on this subject?
Absolutely. I mean, I totally. I mean, my working hours are quite humane, and I probably do kind of maybe 9 hours a day or something like 8. Yes, you know, so quite, because there's after that, you know, you just sort of, it's not very, I mean, we may do some admin in the evening or something like that, you know. So, and then for the rest, you know, you go, I don't know, you know, watching films and things like that, you know, going out walks and things like that, you know. So
your studio is in a nice area, remember? It's like quite lively. It's like, you know, pubs or like places to eat. It's quite inspiring.
Yeah, and it's got, you know, going. I mean, it's everything is different now because you can't go, you know, to concerts and stuff, which I would normally do, or go to theater, etc. You know, but yes, so I totally agree, and it almost seems to be a kind of badge of honor, you know, to say like, oh, I've been doing, you know, 18-hour days every day, you know, for, you know, and in the end, you know, this works for a while, but not in the long run. You know, you can't do this a few years, and because I'm basically always. I always have a project, you know. So you need to find a way where this can sustain for a long time, you know. And then you know, I whatever I can't do, I get someone else to do, you know. So a lot of, I have somebody at the studio who does all the technical things, you know, who installs all the software and hardware, etc., because I don't really have to deal with that. So that saves me time, or some, you know, so, and he sets up this, you know, does the sort of conforming of the sessions and does the marking up of the sessions. So that all helps me. And we, you know, it just means this reduces my you know, my working hours, you know.
If you can delegate the admin stuff or like whatever, you know, you can, especially at your level where, you know, time is very precious. I think that's very good advice. Talking about, you said you have always a project going on. I don't know, I didn't ask you before because I don't know if you can share, but can you, if you can, would you like to share what you are working on at the moment?
No, I can't, you know, because well, you know, you never can, you know, but it's a period drama, and anyway, it's good. I think it's going to be really good.
Yeah. Okay, then look forward to watching that and listening to the music. Well, okay, I think, that was all for me today. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me. I think it was very interesting well, first, it was nice to see you again and talk about your projects and your insight and, you know, good advice for everybody. So thank you.
Well, pleasure. Well, I hope to see you soon again as well.